Hello, Active Sage here on the Sage channel, and I'm going to do a, well, probably lengthy tour of the VFG Industrial Hangar, or as it used to be called, the Asteroid Hangar. Now, this hangar ages ago was actually the first of the new revamped hangars to be finished, at least as far as I can tell, because they were saying, okay, we built the original hangars, the deluxe, the business, the discount, I nearly forgot its name, but we decided when we got to the Asteroid Hangar, this isn't really going to work for the future of space engineers, or no, Star Citizen, I mean. What we need is something that can be more expansive. So this was the first hangar they made that was going to be modular in their new way and much more expansive and bigger. And originally, if you had a large ship, you were just going to have an asteroid hangar. But of course, they reworked all the hangars now, and you can have a large ship at any of them. But the asteroid hangar, renamed the VFG Industrial Hangar, which you might as well just continue calling it the Asteroid Hangar because it's much easier to say than that, is actually still pretty dang beautiful, though. Is still what they originally showed us. They didn't have to rework it all. But it's actually a very nice site. You can see it, the Asteroid Hangar has a bunch of stone to support its ceiling, and of course, the Asteroid Hangar, unlike the other hangars, would be out near the far reaches of the galaxy, away from most of the secure and safe things, and when you get a scuzzy ship, something where you might be doing some piracy in, this is the hangar you're going to get with it right away. This is the hangar that you're going to end up with. Now, this hangar does have a few graphical issues, as you can see right there with that gigantic glaring light. I've restarted the game probably twice, and I've gotten in and out of a match to try to get that to go away. It doesn't want to go away. And also, you can see a lot of flickering on the surfaces, the Z fighting. But I have to remind you all, this is pre-alpha, this is just one of their modes, so there are some issues in here, and I'm going to point them out as I go through. Now, to start out, you might have noticed that right away there isn't a big door in front of us as there usually is in these hangars. Unlike the other hangars, this one has its doors directly above, and because we're in space, it kind of makes sense, because it's just stuck in an asteroid. Why have the doors in front? You can have them directly above you, so above each one of your large docking areas, you'll see a big old door, and there's actually, it looks to be, I believe, 3 different types of doors, so I'll actually get to those later, where you can see that one has a big arm. This one sort of looks like it'll open in the middle with its 2 little arms there, and then that one over there, I'm not quite sure how that one opens up, so I'll get those in a bit. But first thing, we're going to go ahead and actually look at where our sort of normal starting stuff is, where your trophies and fish tank and all that go. That's right down here. It's a nice little fish tank stuck here, as per usual, but unfortunately this hangar, oh boy, out of all of them, actually seems to have some of the worst graphical issues, and which is, I find very strange, considering this hangar was supposed to be the first one done, and they were showing it off for ages and ages before they reworked them all and gave them out, but this one appears to have a lot of LOD issues, and not so much the pop-in we got with the first hangar, which used to be called the discount hangar, but a lot of just texture issues like this, where you got Z fighting, where it looks like there's like maybe 2 LODs existing on top of each other, and one of them is extremely low resolution one, where it's blurry. And by the way, for this hangar, because it was actually really bad, I was getting tons of these, I set it to very high, my graphics settings, and it seems to have fixed some of them, but I'm still getting a lot of issues, as you can see. By the way, this is where your trophies and whatnot go, I guess. And then we have the large opening door, which I actually started most of my videos showing. Here it is, the door for this one. I suspect it'll lead out to maybe a commerce area or something where you can drive your buggies around just like the other ones. But it's a pretty cool door. You can see it's got a lot of interesting stuff here. I'm not exactly sure what the point of this is here. It just looks like a spinny thing for the point of a circular spinny thing. I don't know. I'd expect it to be a hinge or something, but these doors mainly look like they would just pull backwards a bit. Maybe with a double thing. I can't quite tell. It is all very strange, but I guess the sort of industrial look that this hangar has sort of makes sense that it would be a little bit haphazard in the way it was put together. And also I love the fact that there's these little wires going up and down here and this paneling over it, and you see that's even different on this one, so it's not just a mirrored side to side, it's actually a bit different, and there's more panels here. Pretty cool, pretty interesting. Anyway, moving on from that door, which it's a little hard to look out because of how bright it is, because of that lighting issue right now. Let's go ahead and head up this stairwell here. Nice little spark out of nowhere there. But let's go ahead and head up this way here. And by the way, you might have noticed the little hollow panel there. Same one from the business hangar, or I believe it's been renamed the AeroView hangar. Bit strange. I'm sure we'll get our own custom one. Actually, I suspect in the future we're not even going to use that. We're going to use the controllables up there to maintenance our ships. By the way, there's your nice little helmet. Nice little catwalk that we're going up, by the way. I probably should have pointed out. Especially down here, you can see it better. It actually has some nice little lights on it, which actually looks really cool. It looks even better if the whole one area over there wasn't blown out. So if I go like this, you can see really nice lighting on it, the railing heading up, a little ship in the distance, nice stone, very nice. It's pretty great. I like it a lot. As we're heading up, you'll also notice that the railing itself has a nice amount of detail to it, and the fact that each little railing arm going up actually is 2 little arms, and each of these arms are composed of what looks to be 3 pieces. A blue piece, a sort of grayish brown piece right in the middle, and then another blue piece. It's pretty cool, and you see the sort of modular nature of it, where it's like these big poles here each have their own little mini arm up and down, and they sort of fit together into this, and then a new one clamps in there and it carries on. It's all pretty cool. And it gives you the idea that this place could be taken apart and rebuilt in any sort of way, and also easily repaired if it was damaged. Let's say if you had a big ship coming in here and some derpy bugger decided to push forward instead of back and managed to ram it, you could probably repair it pretty easily. Now, heading up here, we got more blown out lighting, but you can see that there is a pretty interesting wall here. We got nice indentation of everything, where it indents inward some at the edges here, and you actually see the large clamp sort of heading into the wall. It's pretty nice, and a lot of nice bolts in it as well. Pretty well put together. Unfortunately, again, though, the lighting is making it a bit hard to stare at any of this for a long time. Up there, by the way, you can see what looks to be a bit of an LOD issue. If I back up to here, I was seeing a bit of it starting to fade out. There we go. You can see little dots on it. I think that's an LOD thing. Or it's starting to try to switch between models, but I suspect it doesn't properly have one. And that actually is bugging me. The way this little joint here looks is the fact that it's so square and with those smoothed edges. It looks out of place compared to the very hard edge stuff that we have everywhere else. I'm suspecting that unlike a lot of other hangars and ships where it seems like they forgot the smooth edges, this one they forgot to leave it on hard edges. But overall, it could look pretty cool. Also, by the way, you probably noticed this is where you'll get your suit. Again, like I was saying, this hangar is having some serious LOD issues with textures. It looks like the actual model is loading in the proper LOD, but the textures itself on all of it are just a blurry, nightmare-y mess. Anyway, let's keep moving from that. You got your towel there on the wall. You got a nice little pointless overlook area here, but let's be honest, a pointless overlook area isn't pointless if you get to overlook things and enjoy it. And then we have this thing here. It looks to be that all of the sort of bog standard stuff that goes in between all the different hangars, that's one of the main things that's hit badly by LOD issues in this hangar for some reason. So there's that. Let's move on. Before we go up this elevator here into the main area up above, let's go over here to this large machine. By the way, I just got distracted by this rather interesting, almost vent-like thing that seems to have computer stuff behind it. A little hard to look through those panels there, but it's pretty cool. You can see the cords coming out of it and just going down into a nice big heap on the floor. Interesting mess. Again, as per most hangars, I do hope you'll be able to actually clean up a lot of this stuff if you want, but also just leave it messy and maybe move around and have your own choice of stuff. By the way, you can see the LOD there. As I back away, it loads in just a single plane for each of those vents, and you can see through it more easily. Pretty small issue there. I'm not even sure they'll bother fixing that. Pretty cool thing over these lights here too, I just noticed. A bit strange. I don't know exactly how it's connected. I thought it was bolted in at the bottom or in the middle, but there's no actual bolt point, so it looks like it's just floating there a bit, but still pretty cool. Anyway, moving on to this big huge machine here, which was one of the first things they showed when they first showed off this hangar. It's pretty dang cool. It reminds me of the piston, or not piston thing, but the hydraulic system that I was seeing in the AeroView hangar. Maybe this is how they power their large doors up above. It's pretty cool. You're hearing those little sparks, I'm sure, and you can of course see a few of them every now and again. It's pretty cool. It's pretty well modeled. I like the little vents here on the sides. I love the little spinny gear bits. None of it makes too much sense to me, but who knows. It looks cool, and I'm sure it serves a function. Pretty nice, and I love the way the middle bit sort of bobs up and down gently. Pretty cool. I like it a lot, and the pistons moving and stuff to keep it there is actually very, very nice. I like it. If we carry on this way, though, you'll notice that the passageway here stops, or the walkway, which is a very strange thing, because most of the hangars, when you go up to like the second level or whatever, it usually allows you to walk around the whole length of the hangar, around the whole thing, even to the other sections where it's expanded out. But unlike those, this one, it just comes to a complete stop. And I have a sneaking suspicion they might actually change that in the future. With the number of glitches in this hangar, I suspect it'll eventually get sorted out and changed around a bit more, and this will probably end up looping down to over there, so you'll be able to walk all the way over there without having to go down there, which there's actually a ladder to get up to that second platform right there. Anyway, let's go ahead, and by the way, I just want to point out, check out the wires going between all these lights and stuff. Some LOD nightmare with that light there, but it's still pretty dang cool that they actually have those wires going in between the lights right here. Very nice. Anyway, let's continue on back to where we were earlier, to that elevator I mentioned that I didn't actually use. So we'll run back over here. And pretty nice door. A lot of detail on this. It reminds me sort of the Ishimura, if the Ishimura was even dirtier. It's pretty great. Also, some writing up there, which looks like it's almost pretty much... Looks like it probably, well, something USA. Ohio, Cincinnati, Ohio, USA. I don't know. Probably an old business. But here we go. We hop in here, and I'm going to look this way. And you see a nice amount of detail on the back wall here. All these little bent things. You can actually see all the way through to a stone wall behind this metal wall here. It's pretty cool. I love the fact that these little thingies here are all bent out of shape in different ways as we go up. And I like the fact that there's this sort of metal venting here that you can then see pipes and stuff behind it. It looks even better when the lighting's not being blown out. But unfortunately right now it has some serious glitchy issues. There's a lot of great detail right here. And you can see all it's just extremely high poly stuff, and it's great. And very little Z-fighting. You get a little right there, but that's just some bolts, I think, not behaving correctly. Overall, it's very nice, this elevator, and you even get a wonderful vent above you with some wires hanging down through it. Pretty dang cool. And some more wires here in these support beams. Pretty awesome. Anyway, let's get out of the elevator. Nice switches there on the wall too. And we are now actually in the main control area. And oh my god! This is the first time. I've loaded this hangar up probably 4 or 5 times. I've stood up here for about 15 minutes before. But this time I spent about 30 minutes before I started recording just sitting down below to try to hope all the textures would load in. And this is the first time ever that all these screens have actually loaded in. Usually they're LOD mess. They're just blurry textures. Blurry, colorful textures. But they've actually loaded in this time. And it's fantastic. Okay, let me go back to the elevator here. So, as soon as you come in here, you're going to notice your screens are probably a blurry mess, or they've actually loaded in and you're extremely lucky and ecstatic about it. But what else you'll notice is this huge pillar right in front of you, and this thing is actually fairly awesome in the idea that it has all these pipes above it. So when you first look at it, you'll notice these nice pipes running along the sides, along the bottoms, lots of interesting detail around here. The fact that it's got a nice little bump up right there, and then it has it straight up and another bump to sort of keep the different sections separate, and then it has this nice built together look here of... It actually looks like they have huge bolts that go down in there. I can sort of see it. I'm not pressing any keyboard keys. It's just moving on its own now. But you can see that they sort of have big bolts that go in there and hold this sort of gray thing here. Not sure that's the final texture. It sort of looks like it's almost a foam or something you could touch. So maybe that's sort of like if you happen to trip and fall, you'll bump your head. But it sort of looks like that's the top capping point. Maybe those bolts go through to hold all this together. And then, of course, it's also tied into this larger section here, which looks like it might be sort of a clamping mechanism for this next upper part. And what I've just noticed here actually is that, look at this, there's a handle right there. That little handle there and a nice vent. These things actually technically would open up. So you grab the handle and pull it upwards. There's actually a little bit of an arrow there. And you can see this is like an opened one. So you can see it's been pulled up right there. And you can see inside and it's a bunch of machinery there. Some textures not loading in properly, but still pretty cool, the idea of all these wires and stuff there. It's actually pretty dang awesome. Nice amount of detail. And you see some more doors on this side. There's another double wide door, and this is just a single one similar to the first one we looked at. Pretty cool. And then of course once it gets up there, you can see they have a nice little lights actually designed to shine down at it. Pretty nice amount of detail. This thing is greatly detailed. And actually looking at it now, it looks like there's a big huge blast door that could come down around the whole thing. Hi, there is. Okay, so you see around the whole upper edge there's this big sort of brownish copper thing that goes around the whole line there, and it has these little arrows that come down on it right there with sort of a warning sticker. That whole thing is probably designed so it can come down and lock into this top sort of blackish bit here. And if we could actually jump up on this, which I doubt we'll be able to, but I can try. Nope, no such luck, but at least it looks like there's a slot for the door to come down and lock into there. By the way, the game would appear to be frozen. So, yeah, the game did indeed crash. I'm back now. I just loaded it back up. I had given the game about 10 minutes of just sitting there at a frozen screen before I finally double-clicked on the screen, and of course it whited itself out and went, hey, this program's not responding. Do you want to close it out? And I did indeed close it out. Now, with a fresh load in, you can see the textures are a bit different than they were earlier. Everything seems slightly less detailed. You can see a lot of fuzziness here in the textures. This is where last time before I started recording I had given it about like I said, 10 to 20 minutes or so. Probably, yeah, closer to 30-ish, I guess. But you can see here, a lot of the textures, the actual color is actually really blurred and skewed. It doesn't look as nice as it did before. What you will notice, though, is that the lighting has apparently fixed itself. So let's go down there again and take a look at that door, because it actually, even though the textures might not have loaded in as nicely as they did, in some areas at least, the door itself, you can now actually see the detail in it. It's actually a lot better now that it's not washed out. You can see that there's all those beautiful blue lines up there and stuff. Like this door a whole lot more when you can actually see it properly. It's got these nice arrows to point which way it's going to move. Overall, it's pretty nice. Now, I'm not going to spend much time here because, of course, we've already seen it once. What I am going to do is attempt to use one of these ladders to get back up to the upper area. I can't interact with it. Unfortunately, can't just run up it. Unfortunately, can't do that. Pretty cool, though, that they do have those ladders. Hopefully, we'll be able to use them in the future. Pretty cool that they even have these nice little running lights down here as well. It's amazing all the stuff you can see when it's not all whited out. Pretty cool. Let's go ahead and head back up to where we were, though, in the hangar control room before the game decided to crash out on itself. Yeah, you can see here the textures still haven't loaded in properly on this, but you can actually see more detail in this stuff now that the lighting is fixed. Let's go ahead and get in here. Of course, unfortunately, like in all the elevators, there's no buttons. You just walk in and it automatically works. Unlike some of the other ones, though, the screen currently isn't even working. Again, one of the reasons I point this out is just because it's so strange to me that this hangar, of one of their apparently first hangars to be done in the newer version, seems to have the most issues. Which, I know, sort of makes sense actually when you think about it, but I guess you would sort of expect it to be more polished. Anyway, I believe we were talking about this fancy machine here, which even looks a bit nicer now that, well, for one, it's not being faded out a bit by the lights below, but for two, it actually doesn't have all the proper texture work on it. Actually, no, it might. It might actually still have it. What I am noticing there, though, is a hole there. You see that? Right between this sort of gray part and this sort of darker gray / black part, you can see right through it there. A small hole down to something down below, unfortunately. What I would like to point out, though, talking about things down below, is an LOD issue that apparently is appearing here. I think that's just an issue with the hangar not loading everything in. And I think this glass usually does line up correctly, but you can see down below this glass there are all those pipes coming out of the bottom of this machine, which is actually really, really cool, I think, and a nice touch to have all that down below. Now, what I did first mention when we were looking at this machine was to take a look up above it. And that's the fact that it's got a bunch of pipes and cords up above it as well, and it's sort of this tangled mess. And it actually reminds me of something out of the Matrix almost, like you'd expect people to be jacking in around this machine. It's pretty cool, and I love the fact that they have all these little connector things, like you'd imagine shooting that, just pop loose, and you actually see the way it fits together. It's pretty cool. And you can see how they'd fit more of them in, so it's like almost all these cords are modular. It's pretty awesome. I like it a lot. Nice amount of detail. By the way, you will notice, though, that all these screens now are, like I was originally saying, blurry. So it's a good thing I did actually run up to them really quickly so you could get a glimpse of what they are supposed to look like. They're pretty dang nice when they're actually working. But unfortunately now they're back to the way I'm used to seeing them, which is just a blurry mess with some LED issues. But I do think it's pretty interesting that on this apparently CRT huge ass monitors that are for some reason here, I don't know, my hypothesis there is maybe they're actually some sort of depth hologram monitors that projects a hologram only inside of them. I don't know. But it's interesting that they actually have modeled in the tape that's on the outside of it. It's pretty interesting, the attention to detail there. It's pretty cool. And you can see some of the fuzziness on that as we get backed away there. It sort of was trying to switch between LODs, and you can see the LODs popping in and out, and gets scary quick on that. Pretty cool, though. It's a nice desk, nice chairs, bit of leather that's now looking a bit blurrier than it should, and a nice little assortment of rather old-fashioned buttons and controls. But overall, it's a pretty good look. Nice little flip switches and all that. Yeah, pretty good look. A few little throttly things, and I'm assuming these are maybe door controls or something of that sort. Pretty interesting. Anyway, let's move on from this. Also, you can see a slightly more high-tech, like holographic display here. It's a slightly bent glass that maybe projects up on stuff. It's pretty cool. And also, I'd just like to point out we got the nice screens up here in the corner for whatever reason, with actually a nice amount of detail to the cords there as well. And then behind this screen, you can see how it's held up. Shockingly low poly, I'd say. It's actually got a beveled corner here, a beveled edge, but when it comes up to the very top and it just stops, it doesn't look so good. I'm thinking it's actually alright if we could just, there we go, if we could just jump in this game and actually get to places. Unfortunately, with the FPS module not quite done, there we go. It's a little hard to get on top of things sometimes, but you can see there, when the light flashes on, you can see there is actually some detail carved into the side of it, which means the silhouette, if you were to look straight from above down on it, is actually pretty nice. So having a flat top is not actually a problem, as long as you actually notice that there is that detail there. It actually makes sense to have it, because it's like a big metal beam that just cut straight through. It's pretty cool, actually. By the way, these chairs are pretty nice, and the fact that you can see that the armrests are designed to sort of go up, sort of like a movie theater armrest almost. And there's some nice detail on these. The detail on everything is pretty nice. And actually the floors too, if I get down here and look, you can actually see that they have huge amounts of detail modeled into these floors. A nice differentiation between different sections with this sort of light metal here and then the darker metal there. By the way, if you're seeing the screen suddenly jump somewhat every now and again, that's not me doing it. That's the game just having a hissy fit. I don't know quite why it's doing that. I think, again, it's just an issue where the character's body's facing one way, and as I turn, the head turns, and then it jumps when the body actually tries to catch up. I'm thinking that's what's happening. Yeah, there's a jump. Anyway, that's that. We have some nice other stuff here in this hangar, of course. We have this nice big engine turbine thing here. Huge amount of detail on that as well. I like the fact that it's got these little cords coming out right there and then looping back over and back in over there. Not sure what the point of that is. Maybe it's supposed to be a failsafe so that if everything breaks free, it'll sort of just hold it in place and keep it from buzzing away and maybe destroying something else. Or maybe they are supposed to actually have cables inside them with electrical current. I can't quite tell. There's one that's busted up over there, but I can't actually seem to see inside of it to see any detail. It is pretty cool, though, that inside this jet engine turbine thingy, there are some cords in there and everything. It's pretty nice. Of course, the textures, like I said earlier, aren't fully loading in, unfortunately. Let's keep moving on from this thing, which has a rather plain backing to it. And look at this fan. Now, this fan is a thing of nightmares for two reasons. One, it's behind it. It's just a solid wall, so it's completely redundant as far as I can tell, unless something is being flowed in through an edge, which I cannot see. And two, because of its LODs. Thing of nightmares, that vent. Drives me mad, the LODs on that one. Because pop! Okay. It almost looks to me like, well, I'm actually oh, Lord God. I'm pretty sure it's a automated LOD system where it's just removing polygons at the farther away you get. Unfortunately, on something like this where it has this small detail of these rings going around it, you really don't want it to... You really don't want an automated thing doing that, because it's like, well, if I take out, every other polygon, or, remove these vertices and start cutting down, it should be alright, because hopefully the silhouette will be maintained. Well, unfortunately, the silhouette on that is absolutely annihilated. And of course, the LODs for something like this, you should still be able to clearly see those rings, probably from all the way over here. So the fact that it's shifting LODs so quickly, I think, is actually just a bug. Oh, also a table with textures having a nightmare. And then, of course, the iconic couch that they were so happy to show off in their videos of this hangar originally. Unfortunately, again, since the game crashed, the textures have not loaded back in properly for some reason. It would appear that, I don't know quite what that is. Maybe it's some remnant of the specular shining through and actually still showing up, but unfortunately, it ends up just being a brown couch right now. I've never been too keen on the couch. As I mentioned earlier, I hope you can customize a lot of this stuff in the final game, but I'm sure that will, if it does come, not come anytime soon. Anyway, the last thing they really show up here is, I think I've given a pretty good brief overview of all this. There's a huge amount of detail in this hangar. A huge amount of detail just in the corners and everything, and the fact that you got pipes going around here, and you got supports actually coming down and sort of around them like that, and you see how the metal is cut there to allow the support to go through it. It's pretty great. So there's a huge amount of detail there, but the last thing I got to show up here is the windows, of course. And like a lot of the hangars, it's got these nice slanted glass windows, and it's actually pretty cool that it slants that way and it slants that way. Nice little, not triangular, but corner there. It's a huge amount of metal there, too, to hold it in place. It's a pretty cool view from here. Unfortunately, I think there's actually supposed to be some sort of texture on these windows, but it's also currently a bit overly blurry. But it's pretty cool. Gives you a nice view of your hangar. The fact that it wraps around the side also means you get the nice view over there to see your ships. And you can see that your ships sort of tear down every time it goes to another ship area, so I don't know if it'll continue to tear down the farther away you get from the center area, or if it'll end up tearing back up. I sort of expect almost tearing down, because then you could say you're on the edge of a slightly curved asteroid, so the farther away you get from this point, which would be the high point, it would get farther and farther down. Anyway, let's go ahead and get out of here. By the way, I did notice I was also walking on these little cable support things where you got cables across the floor, and they got these things that try to keep you from running them over with the vehicle or stepping on them. Pretty cool. Let's get out of here. Let's go back down and actually take a look at the ship stuff. Oh, by the way, this is like that thing we were looking at down below, except for it's got even more cords on it. Whole lot of cords, and actually it looks like they tried to make it look like somebody just jaggedly cut their way through this to get the cords through. Pretty cool. Again, with this sort of makeshift look of things. And now that we're in here, we're actually going to look this way. So you can see that in those nice little fence doors closed there, some texture problems there, but we carry on down, and it's a pretty dang cool view. Oh, some lights there from the side. Pretty awesome. It's pretty nice. And it looks like this metal beam goes all the way up, which was something I looked at earlier with the cords in it. So it must actually be moving along that. Pretty cool stuff. You can actually see this little piston thing here goes all the way through, so that might be what's actually pulling us up and down. Very, very cool stuff. Very, very cool. Anyway, we're back out here, of course, and now let's go ahead and actually look at the flooring out there, and then I guess just poke around to the farther edges and look at the big doors up above. Now, getting down here, by the way, I love those lights. Now you can see how I was talking about a little bit more. Very nice. And also, the lighting seems to have fixed. Some other stuff seems to be blurry, but now the fish tank is actually lighting up and texturing correctly, which is a pretty nice sight to see. Anyway, let's carry on moving before I look at things I've already glimpsed at too much. And if we were to go ahead and move over here, you'll be able to see that this hangar, like all the others, has these nice little flashing lights that go around it. Now, a lot of the other hangars have flashing lights that just go in a straight line towards the door. Given the fact that these doors are straight above, these flashing lights actually go around in sort of a big cube circle. Well, they go around in a circle, but it's a cube shape is what I'm trying to say, around your ships, which is pretty cool. And also there's this nice detail of these things here. Again, I get the feeling there's some automated tessellation going on here, even though this close you wouldn't think it. But unfortunately, it's impossible to control your camera when you're crouching right now. And unfortunately, it looks like there is some automated tessellation going on, and it's causing some real nightmares with this stuff and ruining whatever look they were going for, I think. But you can sort of imagine it if there were nice, smooth, circular rings here. Very, very cool. Anyway, that's the floors in this little area. Something about this hangar, I think it's the fact that there's so many text, like so many edges and stuff that seem like they're skewed and twisted wrong. It sort of puts me off on this hangar a lot, and the fact that the textures often give me trouble really, really bugs me. There's some nice stuff here, though, you have to admit. When they're taking the time to model it all in, though, it is nice to actually see that the light actually has its own model in there. A little area modeled in there for the edges of the lights. It's not just a texture. It's pretty great. It's pretty great. I like it a lot. At the same time, I get irritated at it because of the issues it comes with. But it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. And there is a huge amount of detail. The fact that you got these pipes going through here. You see little pipes that suddenly don't really... Yeah. LOD issues galore in this hangar. It is a troublesome thing. Some nice little containers here that seem suspiciously clean. I actually have a sneaking suspicion that their texture might not have fully loaded in. There is some wear and tear, but it still looks a bit strangely clean for everything else in this hangar. A few boxes that I would expect to see in here. Again, like most of the hangars, you have random boxes scattered about. These ones seem a bit more befitting of this hangar than the other ones there. And then we've reached the other wall here where you can see they have like some nearly collapsed scaffolding, some bent metal. Earlier I was talking about easily replaceable stuff, so maybe you'll have options to clean this stuff up in the far distant future. I don't know. A bunch of rocks whose textures appear to have not loaded in at all really, except for a very basic color. But you can get the idea that maybe some of this collapsed somewhat. Or maybe when they were expanding this, they had that there, and once they finished they said, well, screw it, it's sort of hoping to hold things together, just leave it there. Kind of interesting, pretty nice. You got this nice little thing here where the metal sort of does its nice little triangular bits up it. Very nice, that idea of having the lighting on there too, which is a similar light that we saw before where it looks like it's sort of like the metal grate in front of it might just be hovering a bit. Nice little bolt could fix that easily enough. And then we come up to more what I'm assuming were just construction work, things that they just left here when they were done. Pretty interesting. You can actually hear some machines in the distance too, which is actually probably this big machine here, which is similar to the one we looked at close earlier. But of course this one we're lower to the ground with, and actually I think if we look through here you can actually see that the pipes that we had seen way up there, yeah, we didn't actually see the pipes, but they come out of the huge pistons there, and they come down the hydraulic pipes sort of into this here, and then that carries down into the very base of the machine. Pretty cool, pretty nice. Anyway, I think that's about it for these. There's not too much detail to really wax and lyrical on about forever on them. Some nice big bolts, but they're, again, seem to be not properly textured or modeled out, or something about them just doesn't seem right to me. I think it's the fact that it's such a hard cut there where they're installed. Something about it, I don't know. I think they would look better if maybe they had a slightly beveled edge. Then again, maybe they do and it's just an LOD. Anyway, moving on from that, we're going to head over here. Again, some nice wires running along the floor and some nice paneling holding it all together. And we come down to this downward ramp. And follow a nice ramp down. Unlike the AeroView hangar, there's no stairwell, so you just got a nice big ramp. So in a way, it's actually even better for those in a wheelchair, even though we're in the future, and hopefully there'll be a way to repair your spine and not end up in a wheelchair by that time. Another ramp here, by the way, so you got 2 ways down. Pretty cool, and the idea that it sort of keeps this big support here in the middle intact, and you can see that they have the same sort of support here as they did over there, I believe. And now it's actually a bit different. So this is its own sort of strange support, and you see the way it's twisted and bent up there, and then it actually looks like they took this same model that we're looking at right here and scaled it down and stuck it right there, sort of as a way of making it look like it forks up there, and they're working around the rock. So the rock sort of plugs into the top, and then of course it meets the rock again at the bottom. Pretty interesting idea. And of course, if we look the other way, instead of having that, they have a pure stone pillar right there, which is pretty awesome, the idea that they mix it up. Ooh, that's actually a beautiful view right there with the mist moving out between the M50 and the lights and the ceiling and all that. Very nice view. And even the control room up there, which I'm not actually sure I gave a good look at before from the ground, but it's a pretty cool thing. You see some vents pumping air out of it there and some wires and stuff hanging from it. A few sparks on the screen every now and again. Pretty cool. It's a pretty nice thing. I just wish the camera would stop doing that random jump thing. Again, once they get the first-person module stuff underway a bit better, I'm sure a lot of this first-person walking about and stuff will be a lot smoother and hopefully more enjoyable. Anyway, down here we got some more relatively simple metal paneling on the floor. A lot of arrows I've noticed running along the whole edges of things. I'm not exactly sure what the point of those are. A lot of the stuff in these hangars usually has a point. By the way, you can see here that they have those flashing lights going around the edge of each of these 2 ships here. And I have actually seen 3 ships parked here before. And when that happens, it actually makes another one of these panels for a 3rd one. So it's sort of, actually, it looks like the panel's already here. So this is where that other ship would go if you had another one, which is pretty cool. And you can see it's sort of got the plus sign in the middle to help you land, I guess. And what I'm assuming are, I looked at one of these earlier just because their polygons seem a bit screwy, but yeah, I'm guessing these might be drains of some sort or something of that. More of those things, more details. By the way, I'd like to point out just how much of this is actually modeled into the ground. It's not actually just a normal map. It looks like they've actually modeled all this into the ground here. Yeah, they definitely have. Whew. Huge amount of detail stuck in here. Very, very nice. Very, very nice. Let's keep on moving. More of these random sort of openings here. Not quite sure what the purpose of these are. So like looking down into a lower floor. Maybe these are giant like screw bolt things that bolt into these big things that keep running beneath the floor. Maybe these are like I-beams and this stuff just bolts into it. Either way, it's pretty interesting. And you got another panel here that actually looks shockingly modeled in, but not sure there's a point to it right now because this bolts looked a bit silly. Pretty interesting stuff though. Pretty interesting stuff. And I think we just had a layer of textures pop in on us. Because I don't remember this white line being here a second ago, or this yellow line, so it looks a bit better now all of a sudden. Was that the same over here? We had the red. Don't know. Anyway, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I don't... Oh, yep, there it goes. It popped out again, so it wasn't there a minute ago. Like I said, this hangar has some serious LOD issues. Out of all of them, this seems to be the most unstable. That's what this white skew is here. It's actually that texture that we were looking at of those white lines being LOD'd down to nothing. It's a nightmare. Anyway, let's move on from this. The last thing to really show you guys is, well, just the fact that there's ladders over here. I figure I should show you. That's how you would get up to here. There's no real point in going up there. It's the same stuff we've already seen. So ladder, you go up to it, and you just walk right into it. No interaction prompt. If I jump off of it, you sort of slide down it automatically, and then apparently glitch onto it and start climbing back up. Unfortunately, you have no camera control at this point, so if you want to stop and say, I want to look behind me, see what my friend's doing, no dice. Again, hopefully that'll change in the future. And again, it's put me back on it when I press space to fall all the way back down. Luckily, just holding S got me off of it. Anyway, that's that. It's pretty cool. It's even got the metal that bends over the top, so you can use the handrails as you're getting all the way up. It's pretty nice. Last thing to show you, as I said, though, is the ceilings, or the doors. And they're pretty damn notable doors. You can see those lights over there shooting at the yellow in sort of a hourglass fashion. I suspect those might spin when this thing is actually opening, but for now, of course, they're just lit up and sitting there stationary. In the future, they might even be shut off until the door starts to open, then they'll light up and start spinning. It's a pretty cool door. Not exactly sure how this one opens. It looks like it opens left or right from the way we're looking at it right now, I suspect. And it also looks like at the very top there's that sort of green area that might actually fold downwards or upwards. I can't quite tell. Almost looks like there's a blast shield actually that's open right now that might be pulled over it to close it off, to cover up the green area with that sort of yellow and black thing there. And it has little panels up and down. See what I'm talking about? That whole section right there would sort of pull up to cover the green bit as like another locking mechanism, or for some reason it's already open. Maybe it just stays open on this sort of rundown edge of the universe hangar. And then we have what I assume are some big huge locks in the middle here. It's pretty cool. It's pretty nice. A lot of detail up there, and it actually seems to be loading in pretty well. By the way, the screen is unfortunately doing a nice big old wobble here as I walk to my left. This game has a lot of head wobble, which really is quite upsetting. Anyway, you can see also that we have some nice gears there to actually move the doors and open and close them. So that's probably how this works. Somehow these lock things, I don't exactly know how the green section ties into it, but it definitely looks like... Yeah, I was thinking the door opened in half, but now I'm thinking that the whole thing probably just shifts into that wall over there. So as those gears move, it pulls the whole thing over, and maybe this is some sort of hydraulic lock where this one little section here shifts over to the left, and this is just a big claw thing that holds it in place. That could be it. I guess we'll find out. Let's go ahead and do a quick look at the other two doors. This one over here is a much simpler looking door. The middle section there, I believe, actually pulls... I can't exactly tell. I think it actually pulls downwards and inwards a tiny bit. I think they've actually even shown this one opening before. And then these huge doors slide off to the top and bottom. So one goes that way and one goes that way. It's a lot easier to see how this one works, and the fact that you can see this sort of square bits here that slide into each other as it's opening up. It's pretty cool. It's pretty nice. I like this door a lot. I actually would like to see the other door work more, though, because it has even more detail in it, I believe. This one's pretty cool, and the fact that they got the hydraulic pipes coming down from these big machines and then down into the edges is pretty awesome. And actually, seeing those huge, what are they called there, connected to the pistons, it looks like this whole thing, when it pops that open and then moves backwards, it's possible that that could even swing down so the doors would actually fold downwards into this room. It's really hard to move my mouse because a fracking character keeps wanting to, like... I know, it's like trying to, I don't know how to say this. It's like it keeps like bumping around something. It's like it's a spot where it just won't let me look. By the way, I'm pressing W right now and looking that way apparently. Maybe hitting Alt allows me to do that if I hold Alt. Nope. The camera just has a mind of its own sometimes. Anyway, let's carry on moving. One last door to show you, and I think, actually nope, this is actually the same type of door that we saw over on the other side. So that's it, guys. That's it. That's this hangar. If you buy even more ships, it'll of course continue to expand out as you get your hangars. I suspect it'll just expand out this way, like I said earlier, going downwards. Those nice cords I was pointing out earlier that were connecting the lights appear to be missing over here. It's possible it's another LOD issue, because I doubt they would have carved tunnels through the rock to actually put the wires in between it, considering how makeshift a lot of stuff is. But overall, pretty cool. That's a lot of nice blue glow from down below these panels. This is like my favorite spot in this hangar right now. Right here. That looks cool. I just want to like sort of, you know, get a bed sheet, drag it out here and go to bed right now. But yeah, I'm sure this will just continue expanding out. It's a bit less logical to have this hangar continue to expand as the others, because it doesn't exactly look like you just blast through this wall and there'd be another pre-built hangar section you could just take over. But let's be honest, it's a game. Not everything needs to be completely logical. So we'll just have to live with that, I think. Anyways, that's it. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.